Howdy dudes, back at it again. B Junior here for part 2 of noteworthy horror films of the last decade, give or take a year or two. Basically, I got a humongous stack here of standard def horrors today. And again, the rules are basic. No horror comedies, no horror action such as Blade, Underworld, or psychological thrillers like Red Dragon or anything like that in my list. Just straight horror stuff. So, without further delay, let's get into it. Let's see here. What we got here? We got P2. I watched this one recently. I gotta say, I didn't care much for Wes Bentley's performance in that. He's kind of a hit and miss actor for me. I did, however, see him in a recent film called Dolan's Cadillac, which was based on a Stephen King story. He did a great job in that. Him as a psycho in this movie, But the girl that they got to play the lead, yeah, she did a good job, I think. Anyway, P2, decent little cat and mouse game horror movie. Kind of predictable, I would say, but it's worth at least a viewing. This is one that I liked from the first time I saw it, and I'm kind of biased because I'm a humongous John Carpenter fan, but it is John Carpenter's The Ward. Really great atmosphere, just a good creepy little ghost story. Psychological, I don't want to call it psychological, but mainly a ghost story. That type of film. Daniel Panabaker and Jared Harris and Amber Heard and all them. But good little film. Looks good. Sounds good. Got a couple of Argento films here in the standard def ones. The last decade, give or take a year or so. I believe this one came out in the last decade, probably around 01. This is Sleepless. Be sure you get the Arrow video of this if you want to own it, because the Region 1 Artisan DVD sucks. It's a cut version of the film and it's in full screen. This is the correct aspect ratio and the full version of the film. Dario Argento's return to old school giallo of the 70s and even the early 80s, I think. Great practical effects in the movie and just a great atmosphere. Good little basic giallo film. Another Argento from the last decade that I really enjoyed, Mother of Tears. Got some good CGI stuff in it and some really bad CGI, but overall atmospheric. I think he really tied it in with the other two films, Suspiria and Inferno, which is the Three Mothers trilogy or whatever he calls it, or whatever it's called. But Mother of Tears was better than I thought it would be, basically. A couple of Stephen King joints. The Mist. I'm trying to get this one on Blu-ray if you can. But the 2-disc special edition DVD does have that Frank Darabont director's black and white version. He wanted to do it in black and white, but he did both versions. This one has both, and really a great underrated horror movie. I really enjoyed this one. Kind of creature feature movie. Another one that a lot of people don't like, but I personally do. I got this in a Blockbuster closing for like 50 cents. It is 1408 with Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack. Kind of a ghost story in a hotel kind of deal. I enjoyed it. I mean, I can recommend it as much as some of these other kind of B-grade Stephen King movies. But 1408 I thought was a good movie. Overall, it wasn't... The ending was kind of kind of thrown together, I thought. And Samuel L. Jackson, although he gets top billing on the front there, he's probably in the movie about 15 minutes. You can tell he only worked on the film about 3 days. But overall, not a bad outing. I'd say watch it at least once. Another one from the last decade, Wrong Turn. I got it in a 3-pack here with Needful Things and Motel Hell. Anyway, Wrong Turn. The sequels aren't too bad, I didn't think. The main one I like, though, is the original Wrong Turn with I think her name is Eliza Dushku, and some other folks you've seen in other films as well. But Wrong Turn, I think it was directed by Rob Schmidt, but it's one of the last Stan Winston effects shows, so really enjoyed that film. Moving on, Mothman Prophecies. I've talked about this movie enough. It's an atmospheric story based on possible true events. I'm not real too up to date on what that stuff is about the Mothman. I know takes place in I think Erie, West Virginia, one of those, or somewhere up there. I probably just totally messed that up, but atmosphere of this movie is really creepy. Good visuals. I always liked it. Always will. Another one that just made the grade. I think this one came out in, sorry guys, almost dropped it there, 2000. So I snuck it in there. It's off a couple years, but it is Blair Witch 2: Book of Shadows. 90% of people hate this movie. If you really sit and watch this movie, kind of like the Halloween 3 predicament, if you try to watch this movie as just its own movie and try to forget that Blair Witch ever happened, or the phenomenon about that film, if you watch this as just basically its own film, just for giggles, basically, I had a better time. I mean, I enjoy this film. I just like the atmosphere of it. The characters are fun. I don't know. I always enjoyed it. A couple of exorcism movies. Exorcism movies are not my favorite. They just never have been. They're just kind of a flat medium for me to watch. I don't know why. It's just kind of like it's been done before. But Last Exorcism, one of those found footage type films there, I gotta say, I enjoyed it. Very creepy. As those movies go, those movies have been done to death. Speaking of Blair Witch, I mean, it all started basically with Blair Witch and all these found footage movies, and they're still coming out. Apollo, what was it, Apollo 18 or something like that last year? Paranormal Activity movies. Now those movies are pretty decent, by the way. I didn't put them in here, but I can recommend the Paranormal Activity movies. At least give those a viewing. Exorcism of Emily Rose. Enjoyed this film. Jennifer Carpenter played a really great film in this movie. Played a great role in this movie, and I think she really went for it. It's partly a courtroom drama too. If you're into courtroom dramas with a little bit of exorcism in there, you might like it. A lot of people differ with me on this one. This is a low budget one that's just I don't know. I kind of enjoyed about 2/3 of it. The ending is kind of just all over the place, but it's amusement. I don't want to tell you too much about it because it'll give it away, but it's definitely a 3-part movie basically, or a 4-part movie where it's like different stories, but they all tie in together for these girls that kind of ridiculed a boy as this kid, and he goes about I don't know, I don't want to give away, goes about capturing them in different ways, I guess, and having his fun with them, his amusement. But anyway, clown part in that movie is just worth the price of admission. Pretty cool. Probably one of the best atmospheric ones that's in this list is House of the Devil, Ty West. I don't have this on Blu-ray, but that's why I would recommend buying it. I got the double combo with the VHS gimmick thing that came out with it. Highly recommend it. It's highly atmospheric. It's a retro throwback movie that's made like it was in the 80s, so it does feel like an 80s film when you watch it. Talked about that one enough. Reviewed it as well. Here's a pair of movies that I think were kind of good old school throwbacks to slasher films. Laid to Rest and Chrome Skull, Laid to Rest 2. I can recommend these at least one viewing because they got great practical effects in them. And, a masked killer, and especially the beginning of Chrome Skull. I don't care too much for some of the characters in the part 2, but I like them both. I don't know. I can't decide which one I like better. Here's a remake that kind of gotten forgot about over the years. This one's so goofy it's fun. I mean, it's basically a horror movie about a man and his rats. It's Willard, with Crispin Glover, that is. It's not the old one. And I think the old one is not even out on DVD or something. Or Ben, or one of the... I think Willard was the first movie and then Ben was the sequel, or I probably got them reversed. I can't remember. I don't know. Anyway, one with Crispin Glover is a pretty decent little outing. I enjoyed it. His boss is the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, and he's really wild as usual in that movie. Great ghost story. Don't care what anybody says. This movie is awesome. I've watched it a few times and it still scares me a little bit. It's Insidious. James Wan. He made a great film. Great characters. The seance part goes a little over the edge, I think, as far as goofiness, but it still delivers the goods, the scares. It's great. Love it. Here is a recent pickup. One of the retro movies in the vein of House of the Devil by Ty West. The Sleeper. I watched this one recently. I'm going to do a review on it soon. I enjoyed it. I think it got a little kind of out of whack towards the end, but it is in true sense a low budget, family-oriented, throw-it-together project. I mean, it's not anything that's going to change the face of horror like any of these films. I can't say any of these films I've told you about in the first part and this video are going to change the face of horror at all. No, they're not. But these are just noteworthy ones that I think would be worth your time. This is the VHS gimmick combo with the DVD. And I can say I've watched it all the way through and all the special features. There's an hour-long documentary on the making of the film, which takes you behind the scenes of them shooting scenes and specific scenes in the movie. And I enjoyed The Sleeper. The killer's got a good look in the movie. There's good little practical effects in it. Just don't expect a whole lot. Don't expect House of the Devil. It's not quite that good, but it's a decent little outing. I'm going to round out my standard def noteworthy horrors of the last decade with 3 selections from the Masters of Horror series. Now, people are going to say, now these aren't movies. They aren't full-length movies. To me, they are. They're hour-long mini movies. That's what these are. They're hour-long, and each are done by a master of horror or a guy or person that's been in the horror genre for ages, for eons even. The first one I'm going to recommend is John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns. I really enjoyed this one. I've watched it many times. It's atmospheric. A good little film starring Norman Reedus, who you know from Walking Dead and The Boondock Saints. Also an appearance by Udo Kier as a creepy collector man in the movie, and just a great little movie. It's it's an unrated DVD. You could get these in the Walmart bargain bin for a while. And I pieced together a little collection of these Masters of Horror DVDs over the years, and I gotta say this one's really worth your time. I would get it and try to watch it. The next one is Dario Argento's Master of Horror called Pelts, starring Meatloaf and John Saxon. I really like this one mainly because it's just got a really weird storyline and atmosphere. The effects are pretty good in the film, and it really goes for it. It's totally Argento, wall-to-wall Argento atmosphere in this one, and I just enjoyed it. It's got good rewatchability, and the behind the scenes featurette was pretty good on it. And I don't know, I can recommend Pelts. It's pretty good. The last one, banned from cable broadcast. This one was not on Showtime when these were coming out. It is the Takashi Miike imprint. I don't want to tell you too much about this one, but it starts out probably about the first 10 to 15 minutes. You're gonna be like, this isn't really that good. I don't know what's going on. Then it shows you something, and then you're kind of like, ooh, man, that was kind of gut wrenching there. And it goes a little bit further, and a little bit further. This movie just starts building like that, and it just gets wild and wild and wilder and wildest. I mean, it just goes and goes and goes. The gore gets worse. I mean, the storyline goes way out there on the edge. And I don't want to ruin it. If you've never seen Imprint, give it 60 minutes of your life and take it in. But remember, you're going to need a strong stomach to watch this one, because it's got some of those just moments where you're just kind of like, oh man, I don't know if I can watch that. At least it did for me anyway. Guys, that has been part 2 of the noteworthy horror movies from the last decade, give or take a year or two, proving, in my opinion, that there have been some decent horror movies that have come out in the last decade. It's just more of a quality over quantity. Now, these aren't top of the line films for the most part that I've been saying they're pretty decent, but they are something to watch, and they are horror movies that I think are worth your time. A lot of these are going to be, until there's like that big horror movie that just hits. I mean, I know we've had Saw, and I know we got Paranormal Activity going on every year now, but until that big new phenomenon hits again, we're not going to see a whole new line of toys and gimmicks and tie-in TV shows and all that stuff like we had in the 80s, like Friday the 13th TV show, the Freddy's Nightmare show. You had Tales from the Dark Side TV show. I mean, you had all those. I mean, you name it, you had it in the 80s. Was a horror decade. I mean, it just was. There was a rebirth, There was a rebirth of horror probably in the mid to late 90s, but it was a different style of horror. It was the whole Kevin Williamson, Wes Craven era, rebirth and Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, urban legend, movies like that. Here's to you guys. I'm out of here. I'm tired. That's been enough for me. Leave your comments, questions, concerns, and or video response. Do a list of your own. Show me yours. You know, I've shown you mine. Now you show me yours. Show me your selections of good horror movies that you think are good within the last decade or so. Rock on, dudes. I'll catch you next time. Bye.